to introduce Eileen, because Eileen doesn't like the public eye and she stays in the background all the time. If you want her detailed biography, it's in the piece of paper that you have before you. But let me say that Eileen has been very good at collaborating. She's been very good at pulling together multidisciplinary efforts and in working across fields. So listen to her and use her as an example of how to do multidisciplinary work and how to bring people with different backgrounds together to common ends. So with that, Eileen.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to admit that I'm not the tech person, so let's see. Okay, I'm happy to be talking to you guys today. Some of this presentation, a good significant amount of it was just given at the STEAM 3 conference in Atlanta, which is looking at the future of education, not the future of school-based education or informal education, but in a global sense, the future of education. Not even only youth education, which is a good thing. So I wanted to, I don't know. Okay, so. Speech and communications with a minor in sociology with a specialty in interpersonal relationships. And I say, but I have a master's degree. What's your master's degree in? Theater. Oh. At this point, their faces are dropping. The kids are like really interested. And I say, but it's the perfect background, because let me just restate all of that. I have a degree in people talking to each other, human-to-human communication, with a little bit of a smattering of the differences in culture between people. And then I coupled that with experimental theater, where the troupe I was in performed everywhere but a traditional proscenium theater stage. We performed in the front of classrooms. We performed at old folks' homes. We performed at retired priests and nuns' homes, which they are triple digits by the time they get retired. So this was a group of old people. Asleep, most of them. And we were doing Oedipus Rex. And we also played high security, maximum security prisons. This was all in Kentucky, at Louisville. And we actually did Bertolt Brecht's The Good Woman of Setzlon. So German Expressionism in a southern maximum security prison. And we got out. It was a little strange to listen to the gates closing. 3 different, you only have to have a double enclosure for venomous animals, but you have to have a triple enclosure for maximum security. So, and then I took the whole thing, which, by the way, if I look above this, I wanted to be a marine biologist the entire time I was growing up. Math was no problem to me. It was no problem to me. It's so much that I never really developed ways to cope with not understanding math. And when I hit freshman college calculus, I made a 180-degree turn and headed towards theater. After I got my degree, I moved to St. Petersburg and ended up getting hired by a science center who was just starting, ended up being called Great Explorations, the hands-on museum, and we created amazing first-hand science learning experiences. Now, this was the 80s, so there were no computers involved in those, but they were hands-on things. So I routed all the way back around to saying I help people learn math and science and technology and engineering now. And then the teacher starts to smile again, and the kids' eyes start to glaze over. So I know I have to keep moving, because I got one audience and lost the other audience. Anybody seen this before?
I'm not seeing it now.
Well, Education 1.0, Education 2.0, Education 3.0. It hasn't had a lot written about it, but I'm absolutely freaking totally enthralled by Education 3.0. And Alex, can you read that? Okay, great, super. And I don't actually know if anybody knows how to get that picture larger. I would absolutely love it. I don't know if we can with it being recorded. Education 1.0, let me just go across here. Teachers are licensed professionals in Education 1.0. Education 2.0, they're also licensed professionals. Education 3.0, they're everybody everywhere. Hardware and software in schools, purchased at great cost and ignored in Education 1.0. Are open source and available at a lower cost, Education 2.0. Are available at low cost and are used purposefully, Education 3.0. Anybody start to see a trend? Technology is confiscated at the classroom door. They call that digital refugees. I call that some people who still are in leadership positions at IST today, not in the room. Education 2.0. Cautiously adopted, digital immigrants. And everywhere, Education 3.0. Ambient, and it's a digital universe. This sounds like today, okay? But we actually don't do this yet. And here's another one, this is the last one I'll look. Schools are located in a brick building. Schools are located in a building or online called brick and click. Schools are located everywhere. And in parentheses it says, thoroughly infused into society, cafes, bowling alleys, bars, workplaces, etc. I take that one with a grain of salt. But it is amazing. And parents view schools as daycare. We're still here right now. We're definitely still here right now. A place for them to learn too. This sounds like a really cool place to be. And I saw that about 9 months ago, maybe a year ago. Just that. No citation of where it came from. It's starting to flow up, and there's starting to be lots of different versions of that image, mainly the difference in colors. People make the colors different. But it is something that I really want to think about. And what I'm going to speak to you today is not talking about a whole ton of data and results from what we're doing. We do wonderful things. We get great results. That's not my purpose for talking to you today. My purpose for talking to you today is to look at this dichotomy between what I've seen in the past 2.5 years, just in lab projects we're doing, between the way we treat adult learners, by that I'm going to mean 18 and over, and by the way we treat youth learners, birth through 17. 17, 18. There's no difference in those two brains, but the way we teach them, assuming 17 is still in the compulsory K through 12, is totally different. When we look at adult learning, we sit in the middle of a billions of dollars a year industry that says we know that every adult learns differently, and we have to help them. And we have all these things. A project we finished 2 years ago that immediately went into operational use in Orange County has helped to train any of you who live in Orange County, the actual fire commanders who respond to fires. The lieutenant on the first truck to arrive at a fire is the incident commander, and everyone fills in behind them and takes their lead. How do they learn to be those fire lieutenants? Turns out the ones retiring now as battalion chiefs fought 100 fires before they made lieutenant. These folks coming up, very good firefighters, very passionate, have fought 3. Think about your house. 100, 3. How did they learn how to do something as simple as read smoke? Which, by the way, was almost a 3-week journey for the Raptor team to pull out of the battalion chiefs who forgot 20 years ago how they learned to read smoke. They finally got so mad they yelled at Ron, "I learned to read smoke, they just learned by fighting fires." And Ron, to his credit, went, "You just told me they don't fight fires." This is what the chief did. Oh, okay, now we understand the problem. And they started writing. The list was this tall by the time they got done. They left to go get beers. They were exhausted, but they were finally realizing the job they were putting on people who hadn't fought as many fires as they had, simply as a firefighter. So, adult learning. To get to the picture on the top left, well-trained in the operational environment, we don't start with the bottom left or even the bottom middle. Computer-based training and immersive training is very, very, very impactful, but we don't start there. We start by making sure, one, we know the performance metrics and the behaviors and the skills, knowledge, and attitudes we have to do a job. And then we have to figure out a way to rank how well any individual does the job. And we do it through many different things. We do it through ride-alongs with the people. We do it through pre-training supplements. So this is something where they created something to bring people who might have been a little more remedial than the other folks up to at least a baseline. They also made guest lectures. So they were guided lectures where people were learning something. They also had a whole section on reading smoke. That was an entire part of it because it was so critical. And finally, they had a training library. So they said, after all, you've done all these things, you've gone through a cohort of experiences with this, where you've watched multiple fellow lieutenants work through this, we've talked about it, we've used case studies, we've really done a deep drill. Now we say you're trained. What about that thing you never see for 6 months and all of a sudden you're confronted with it and you go, remember that from my training. A lot of times you can't get back into your training because it was online training, your registration expired because you graduated from the course. So, of course, you don't need any of that information anymore because you passed the test. In this instantiation, the training library allows them to immediately go back online and review the things that they did. So it gives me a way to have education following me. Dare I say, right with my phone. I got it with me everywhere. Sounds like a wonderful way to help somebody establish mastery. Because the idea of doing an A, B, C, D, F scale for these lieutenants does not work. Unless they're going to be fired or demoted, everyone has to reach an A level. Because people's lives are at stake. And quite frankly, their careers are at stake. But then we go from looking this way at the 28 to 32-year-olds that were in my lab, and we look this way at, let's say, 16 and 17-year-olds, and we say, absolutely one size fits all. Standardized test, which, by the way, I don't have any problem with a standardized test as part of a rich platform of ways that I evaluate someone. But we have it as the only pillar, and the others are kind of given short shrift, unless you're gifted. I had a gifted son. I know what that means. It means you can't learn by sitting quietly in a lecture. So you have to go to special classes where you can move around. However, he did really well in the Marines when you don't sit, but you move around. So we'll just think about that. One size fits all. Testing skills are highly prized. Who? Do not raise your hand. Do not raise your hand, David, or Randall. Forget your name, but do not raise your hand. Or you. Or you. Who is Dr. Guido Sarducci? No. Okay. Saturday Night Live. The original cast. Was he an original cast member? I don't think so. I think he was a second. There was a character who was a Catholic priest. He was Father Guido Sarducci, and he was an Italian. He had an amazing things, and he did a wonderful section. I did not pull it here because I couldn't successfully download it. But he go on YouTube, 5-Minute University. What he pretty much says is, okay, you're the class. Okay, you're going to get your degree today. And it's not a problem because in 5-6 years, you're only going to remember 3 things from your degree anyway. Who took Spanish? The reason I cringe showing it is then they pan the audience, and we had really bad hair. So it was really bad. But and he goes, what do you remember? Maybe adios or any who speaks Spanish? What's hello?
Hola.
Hola. What's goodbye?
Adios.
What's I want a drink? I don't know, but that's probably the 3rd thing they would have remembered. So if I can only remember 3 things, and you have your degree, then we can very quickly go through those 3 things because we only have to identify those 12 things. We only have to identify 3 of them. We're done. You get your certificate. That's great. In a couple of years, that's all anybody remembers anyway. Don't say anything, or we kill you, or something like that. Although I think that was Billy Crystal in another one. So what does one remember? What does one remember from here? Depends how really good your long-term memory is of facts and figures that aren't connected at the moment in some use of them in real life. It even gets worse. 5% of our learning over our life is done in the course-based compulsory classroom, and 95% of it is done in things we choose to learn or not learn. And this 5%, like we just talked about, is front-loaded. So the idea of cramming facts that I would know at this point in my life, and why should I even think about remembering them unless it's something like gravity and food and oxygen? Why? The facts, the facts, the facts. And oh, by the way, also, this is a really good fact thing. Just for facts. But it won't really tell me if the facts are true. If I'm at UncleDonald'sScienceCamp.com, I don't know that that's the best high-level science source. And it won't tell me if it's contextually true to the problem I have at hand. Nothing will. The only thing that can tell me that is someone or me intimately involved in that equation. So it seems to me that the best things we could actually have as a goal is that everyone understands how to successfully learn. If we have people confident and competent that they can learn because they've been tested on how well can you figure out the best solution, the goal of engineering, then we begin to say, I've given you the skills to learn anything that comes up in the world here on. Which is, by the way, what we're preparing people for, because we're preparing them for careers that haven't even been invented yet. So we can't possibly know what the performance metrics or the critical things for those are. Nolan Bushnell. Do not answer now. Or probably you. Who is Nolan Bushnell? Okay. He founded Atari. He led Atari, he was fired by Atari, he led Atari, he was fired by Atari again. He was the first person who hired Steve Jobs to work in Atari. And he was a smelly hippie who was always stoned, according to the written Evolution of Video Games textbook that is taught at UCS. He laughed when I talked to him 2 years ago at the Game Tech conference, and I also remarked that I liked his picture in the book, which was him in a hot tub smoking a cigar, back from the 80s. He goes, I remember that picture, that was a good day. Still a big smile on his face. He left Atari finally. He started Chuck E. Cheese. He started several other small things, including a little interesting things looking at very early online shopping. The man started a learning games company. So he's clearly set his sights on a new challenge. And this is what he told the Game Tech conference. Lots of high-level DoD folks. Let's eliminate the A through F grading system in K through 12 and just realize that everybody needs to learn. And with enough computers and the right attitude and online connectivity and the assets we need, everyone can do that. There looks around the room, thought he was crazy. Crazy. I thought it was a really interesting thing because, again, at the same time, we're finishing this thing for the fire department and launching it, and I'll guarantee you, I saw the first trainers who came in, very high energy gentlemen, very high testosterone, and they were super pissed because they did not do a good job. Because they were standing in front of it going, I'm playing a game, and they forgot that they were supposed to do things like when dispatch started to talk to them, talk to her. They just looked at the word that said in transit on the big screen. Literally like this. The training chief finally goes, what are you doing? Well, I'm waiting for us to arrive. She's talking to you. Where are you going? Aren't you asking questions? Oh, okay. And then they started going. They left. They were not happy. So I have my theater background. So I'm at my door going, how'd you do? How'd you do? How'd you do? I was watching them. I knew how they did. They were like, give me a dirty look. They leave. They come back in. Come right to my door. So before they go in and go, I had thought about that last night, and I'm going to do a lot better today. And like 3 of them did that out of the 8, and I'm thinking, how do they know that's exactly what we wanted them to do? We wanted them to think about it, internalize it, do whatever they needed to do to be better tomorrow, to come back for training so you can progress further. Take responsibility for understanding how to learn. And they're in their profession, if they want the promotion, they had to take responsibility. What if we did that for kids? So that when they got up here, they already had that confidence and competence. Middle schoolers have the confidence without the competence. Then somehow it gets swapped because of hormones and because of different teachers, so I can have a favorite versus the same teacher all the time. And so it starts to go off. And we do have really good reasons for now being a really good time. Game design principles of engagement, pacing, storytelling, self-exploration, gathering resources, dare I say, gathering things I want to keep that I can refer to later, gathering treasures, getting rewards. All those things we find in games are able to be put towards learning. Ma'am?
Competition.
Competition. We just had a meeting today. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Competition is good for gamers. It's good for nurses too. So a couple of play spaces that we work in, because I'm actually glad I brought these up because there's some people here who have not been quite as familiar with what we've been doing. These are 2 NSF projects. This one launched at the Museum of Discovery and Science with 10 learning enhancements on computer-based learning enhancements to a whole new eco-discovery wing on Warner's Journey Through the Everglades. The second is still active with an NSF supplement to the original award, and it was asking, in a busy science center, this is a 10 by 30 floor, could people learn basic physics concepts? This was gravity. We're currently doing one on waves in the same project. Could they learn the basic physics principles better if they moved through space and literally used their body in a metaphoric fashion? So I am the asteroid. I am the wave, like that. So I have a couple of 2 short videos. The second video was a disaster when I showed it at Steam, so we'll see if it works this time. Oh, no. Disaster. Oh, they're not going to play for me. So I'll see if I have them later, because the first one, it's just the opening of the exhibit, but I will catch that up when I get out of the PowerPoint. And this was it actually in use at the Orlando Science Center as part of, can you turn those lights out? Thank you. As part of, yeah, see the colors are much better. As part of their Otronicon Festival. So think again, people being engaged on a 10 by 30 floor while bedlam is around them. The sound level of Otronicon is at the very top all the time. How do I keep people engaged? How do I get them feeling things? How do I add the A? STEAM. I'm not a fan of the STEAM acronym, although I just presented at a STEAM conference. But I started by saying I'm not a proponent of the STEAM acronym, and then I explained why. Because I've seen, even at UCF, the A mean make our graphs pretty. Make pretty charts. Make colorful things. Give us a picture. That is not what is meant by adding the arts into this. Because we forget about the fact that the arts are also the humanities. And if we want to look at not what it means to make a learning simulation on helping someone be a better fire commander, but how do I get someone to understand being a fire commander in Pine Hills or Paramore versus down in South Miami when I've just come from Ohio. I don't speak any Spanish. From that contextually situated way we live our lives. And if I'm someone who has to go between those contexts, how do I understand that? I don't get that from the science, the technology, or the math. Or the engineering, I get it from the humanities. So what's interesting is, how many of you know Dr. Lori Walters? She's here at IST. If you haven't met her, you should meet her. I persuaded her to take historian off her card. And in place of it, she put contextual specialist. That's really the role she can play on any number of simulation projects, is how does it play in, what does it mean to do a female empowerment simulation? Fire is universal. What does it mean to do a female empowerment simulation and release it in California, in Mississippi, or in Abu Dhabi? Much. How do I understand that before I put into place something that's going to have outcomes that I didn't intend? Sort of the simulation designer's version of first do no harm. Okay, so that was what I really wanted them to understand, because I was asked to go to a digital humanities conference that was downtown at the Melrose Center. And when I walked in, they wanted me to talk to them about this dire straits that they were in. Because all the money was going towards science and technology and simulation, and how can we get support for what we do? And I went here. I said, one, you can forget the Eeyore attitudes and start being a little bit more like Tigger, because you have the cultural seating that everybody needs. Without that, you just have a simulation for every man. You don't have a simulation for this audience, for this purpose, in this context, in this time, 2015. I told them that the sun revolved around the earth. They were blown away. It's like they'd never thought of it. How do we, again, get that I don't think that anybody reached out to the arts people, which is unfortunate because interdisciplinary works both ways, but sometimes you have to realize that you are part of something and no one realizes it, and insert yourself. And say, I'm here because I think I could really handle this for you, and I don't see anybody else on your team that can handle that. So we get to something we're playing with right now, and RG, in the beginning, the robot, is part of this. He is our guide. It is our guide. And Science Valley was an NSF application. It was declined with good comments. It's going back in a month and a half. But it's already been tested at the National eCyber Mission Finals in Washington that the Department of Defense runs every year for National Science Teachers Association. So Science Valley targets the improvement of learner empowerment through activities that afford practice in critical thinking and problem solving. We're looking at can we document prolonged engagement helping learners move from naivete to advanced understanding on a topic? So, and how can we help them both focus and evaluate? How can they give and get information and actually provide their own assessment of how well they're doing? So for instance, timing and tracking is something museums have done for decades, and it's pretty much stalking. So you get a piece of paper, and you might have 50 of them in your hand, and you're going to fill every one of them out with the fourth person who walks in 5 minutes from now. Okay, so random sample. And literally, I'm going to stand behind pillars, and I'm going to stalk her with a timer, and every place she goes, the whole time she's in the hall, I'm going to be able to say, here was her path. Here's the family circus path that was taken, and here's how long she stayed in each place. People used to have to put things on, because like people would see them, and like they'd approach them, like, why are you stalking that person? Okay, here, I work for the museum, and I'm doing this. Shh, we don't need them to know. Because, of course, if they know, you throw it away, because they know, so they're going to affect it. So timing and tracking equals in the game, where didn't I go? So I have to look at it as a learner. Did I explore this whole thing? Because why don't I know what the heck this thing's about this wind experiment? Why don't I know that? Augmented reality views. So if I show somebody in here, even in our prototype, we have a beach ball that seems to be just bouncing in a column of air. Well, if anyone's ever been to a science museum, there's a very good experiment on wind dynamics and really the dynamics of why airplanes fly by looking at the Bernoulli principle. So when you turn the little AR view, you have a little small computer sort of tablet that you can call up, and it gives you ways to look at things. It gives you ways to receive texts from non-player characters. It gives you ways to take pictures of something. And it gives you ways to look at an augmented reality view. So this beach ball, when I put the thing on, I see the wind patterns coming around it. And it talks to me about the fact of faster air and how it differs in speed and in pressure from slower air. And it really gives me the concept of flight. And then this whole idea of photos, notes, text with the NPCs. When you think about my portfolio of learning, rather than the standardized tests, this starts to get into what's really important about that. Because the learner's being assessed by what they choose to do inside this learning game. They're not being pulled out of it to take a test or a quiz about that learning game. So same thing, games really do equal interactive problem solving if they're designed for that fashion. They've got rules, goals, and scoring, complex situations, potentially huge inventories, and large amounts of data. And the bottom is really perfect. They never hardly ask the question what. You explore what if. That's the question. What if I did this? Oh, that was disaster. Okay. What if I did this? And I could be sort of hunting and pecking. Do I start to see that someone starts to understand and becomes more efficient? One of the things we do in our lab is we explore new technologies, techniques, and we grow new talent. So sort of those 3 T's. And I just was showing the audience some ways that we do that in this during this past year. High-level intern team, all working on a competition for Canon USA using their MReal mixed reality system, looking at exploring different uses for mixed reality in the physical world. Of course, when you do a good game, you make paper prototypes. But when you do a good game that involves physical spaces, paper is only 2-dimensional, so it doesn't work. So we used some connects and pulled them apart and everything, and made physical prototypes of the things that we were then going to demo. This is a final slide of the winning team. They had half a mannequin. We were using markers in order to show the mixed reality. And in this marker was a video of a writhing, pained head. The moment that the person applied the compress, because this was for a gushing chest wound, so if you had the goggles on, you could see the gushing chest, the virtual blood coming out. As soon as the person applied the complex and stopped the blood, the face got less pain. Took a breath like they were going, oh my God, okay. That reaction won the team the $5,000. There were 4 teams competing against each other. The judges said, that's the moment we scored them high enough that they ended up being the winner. It impressed them, it was engaging, and it took talent who had never played with this before and really became some of the first people to do product demos at a university level for Canon, which they were really excited about. So, if you notice, 17 and below, playing Science Valley. Oh man, did they have fun. This, who is the head of RDEcom? I forget the man's name, but this is him. He came in because they're one of the sponsors, ended up staying a half an hour in our workshop while the kids took him all the way through this idea of Science Valley. These 2 girls were perfect instantiation of this idea when I'm talking about doing things in real life and learning when I need to know. Within the first 15 minutes, they were not having fun because I let people self-select into the 5 teams, and these 2 girls picked their own team. And as it turns out, you need the WASD keys to navigate and the mouse. Neither one of them were PC gamers. They couldn't move. And the first thing was, go find crates and learn how to use the environment. I could tell. I let it go on. I let it go on about 2 minutes after I realized it. And then I said, everybody stop, because this was a military thing. They weren't competing against the 5 teams. Everybody had to learn and come out with the best decision so that the whole squad was well trained and moved on. I said, who are good drivers? 1 team of 3 boys. I knew they were because they already done 4 iterations with the robot. I mean, they found stuff right away. Okay, I need 1 of you drivers gone over here in 3, 2. To their credit, man, they were good. One of them popped up and came over here. The girls latched onto him like they just hired an Uber car. It was like, we want to go there. I mean, I could see it. They knew where they wanted to go, but they couldn't move. Well, guess what? If I want to go somewhere in a tank, I got to find a tank driver because I don't know how to drive a tank. I might know where I want to go. The moment that constraint was taken away from them, they were off and running. This was a really, really, really successful team because while the boys jumped in and were running around, they were just playing a game. The girls couldn't move, so they started thinking, and they actually were doing a lot more strategy, and we relieved their transportation problem. By the end of the 2-hour workshop, they figured out how to use WASD keys. They weren't doing them well, but they could, you saw them going, they look at each other, they could kind of move around. So they'd also learned, don't sweat the details if it's not your role at the party, go find a driver and move on, because your goal was not the WASD keys. The goals were find the crates and run the robot trials so we know the best makeup of our robot to beat the DARPA robot. That was the overall goal. So here are the kids. Here's the 2 who presented. The program I brought with us, this man David, he wanted to sink through the floor. I didn't know the kids were going to do this, but I loved they were going to do it. I loved they did it. Everyone was just presenting because some people did things like make a prototype of a night vision goggle, which was really cute because these are middle and high school kids and they will say anything. Total science nerds, so they don't yet know what not to say. There's about 150 people in the audience because there were 40 of them. Lots of uniforms, lots of military. We were at the night vision goggle workshop, so we thought we were going to get to do night vision goggles, but we made a box. In fact, they made a prototype of sort of a pinhole camera and something. They weren't impressed. So these 2 had already asked me, we need the screen. Can you get us the screen? So, okay. the screen's there. Why not really anybody use the screen? I said, well, their workshop's kind of screen-based, so they don't really have anything to present. Oh, all right. Well, you go third, and we'll let you use the screen. Here's the screen. This boy's moving, this boy's moving the thing, this boy's talking. We were doing a prototype of a wonderful new learning world. So they maybe spent about 30 seconds. They had 2 minutes. 30 seconds on the actual competition. And then, man, if this kid, he's either going to be in jail or he's going to really be successful. He gets this grin on his face and he goes, and guess what we found out? And the other boy, they looked at each other, and the other boy went flying over the edge of the world and jumped off the mesh and came underneath the mesh because it was only a prototype. We hadn't put boundaries on it. David's like, oh. The adults are very confused. Every kid in the room, like, almost jumped out of their seat. They're like, yeah! And they go, you can't do this in a finished game, but a prototype means there's still changes to be made. And they're off and going. The kids said stuff. Every kid could tell me later what a prototype was. And why it was fun, because you could still make changes. It was really cool. And these kids were operating all of it because they needed to know something. And so they figured it out. None of them had done robotic stuff before, but they worked as a team. And they worked really well. And they did it, they showed that growth within a 2-hour workshop. That's an example of this timing and tracking that I'm talking about. And for instance, player 3, who's the yellow, never went to this entire part of the world. So think about everything I think, and I'm referring to as an assessment, I'm also referring to as a learner tool also for self-assessment. Because if a learner could get to that when they had a question, or if the system prompted them when they couldn't get that answer twice or couldn't solve it, to say, do you remember going past the whatever building in the world? It was up real far north. Check your path map to see. And then they see they never went there. So they jump back in and go there. Guess what? When they come back, they're ready to answer the question. They're ready to move on because they found they didn't have something, they went and found it, and then they came back and applied it. Our sheet from the robot race. So you have 14 potential things you can get. You only need about 6 of them. The others are different choices. So you have a couple of different feet, in essence, a couple of different arms, a lightweight body or a heavyweight body, things like that. But when you come over, you get a score. So everybody, of course, wants the high score, back to Alex's comment about competitiveness. But also, what are the nuances? What are the differences between these so that I can look around and analyze and figure out the best solution? We chose, well, we had Army laptops which couldn't be networked together. So we chose to make that an artistic constraint. And when I walked in, I said, we don't have networking with these. So you got to walk between them to figure out who actually has the best combination out of all 5 stations. You've got like 50 permutations there. Figure out. Darn if they didn't. They grabbed pencil and paper. They were walking. They were going back and forth. And they eventually came up with the best one that gave them the best time. And they were all like super excited. When they started, they knew nothing about the world, nothing about the challenge. They didn't know each other because these teams were put together so the kids could learn, could meet other people. And yet they did all this in the span of 2 hours. Phase 2 prototype design. For those of you who are gamers, when I did the original footage with RG, that was things done from the Unity Asset Store. So sometimes when you do something really fast, we had to stand that up in a week to make the deadline in Washington because we were given a free spot. And we said, we're going to make that deadline, so get it one way or another. We've added water feature, which we didn't have in. And this is on its path right now to look at, it's being released online as a control game for an NIH project we're doing with University of Miami. That happens to be with Latinas age 10 to 12, which are an okay age for this. We're going to release it, and we've actually got our own little survey because we don't care if boys take it, we don't care if adults play with it. In fact, we want to see who plays with it if you just get a free Unity build that's available for anybody to play. It's a good control because it has nothing to do with health, which is what the original game is. But what we're going to see, because one of these, this is what I'm kind of uniquely interested too. So I'm trying to scrub any demographic mention of age from the descriptors when I talk about learners, because in a real world, in this world, age is a really problematic thing to make determinations on. I would much rather make it on psychographics So how much do they know about a topic between learner A and learner B? And if they're very naive, they need more guidance. But we should see an inverse curve between the learner getting better and the guidance going down. We see that happen. I'll give you an example. Master bird watchers don't need anything but their eyes and usually a pair of binoculars because they want to look further away. And they can talk to you for a day or days about every bird they see. Me, I'm going with the master bird watcher because I can identify about 4 and I don't want the guidebook. So I'm going to need a master bird watcher. But how do I get from me to the master bird watcher? I get there by stair-stepping what I know, what I don't know, playing with things, talking to people who know more than me, and working my way up. Same way we all figured out when 3 hurricanes came through Orlando in 6 weeks, what it meant to recover from a hurricane. We all figured that out in a very experiential method. I want to sort of leave you with this, which is a concept for something that has a presence in Science Valley, this thing called the connected garden. We don't actually use the connectivity part in Science Valley, but this is its own, it's a little bit on hiatus right now, but ADL funded the original of this, which was, if I take a garden and I sensor it up with sensors, in this case, light, water, and temperature, could I use the information to change a garden? Think of this as a physical garden outside of a Science Center window. This happens to be a monitor. It's showing that garden, but unlike I can't mess with the real world or I don't want to, I can mess with this virtual world. So what happens if Orlando undergoes even more of a severe drought or a severe drought like California has for 15 years? None of those plants will be growing here. And in simulation, what can we do? Mess with time, scale, and space. So in the span of 5 minutes, I could give a learner a look at Orlando, given these parameters, this temperature, this sea level rise. What's it going to look like in 50 years? What would grow here? Let's see. Who has those parameters in the world right now, and what's growing there right now? So the connected garden isn't meant to go from the garden in between these 2 buildings to our lab. It's meant to go from, say, a science center to a garden in Spain, and a garden in India, and a garden in Orlando, and a garden in New York, and a garden in Australia, to give people a global idea for what grows where, when, to, hey, maybe take some really big leaps into the idea of, could we solve the global food challenge? Because we throw away billions of tons of food on this planet, because it's in the wrong spot for where it's needed. Somebody who's a naive learner needs a lot of guidance. Somebody who is growing their own garden with the help of master gardeners or is a master gardener owning one of the gardens that are all over Orlando, they have a much more of a knowledge, and they love to talk with it about anybody who comes. The UCF Arboretum, perfect example. They'll talk to anybody who comes, give you a great education, and if you help them weed, you get a quarterly bag of the stuff they grow. Can I get good enough for cognition in the wild? Where I'm walking around and I realize as I'm walking through the Cloisters Garden, which I did over the summer up in New York, in Manhattan, big sign at the front saying, no edibles are to be planted here. I walked by rosemary. I walked by sage. I walked by a ton of things that people had just stuck in the ground, people who lived there. No one said anything. No one ever put a sign on it, but everybody who came by went like, oh, I want to live in a rosemary. You didn't know. The forest department isn't looking close enough where they would know, but it's not a problem. Nobody planted orange trees. Maybe they were trying to stay away from it. I don't know. But anyway, here's the big question. How can we make sure learners know how to learn when they get done with what we're taking them through? Whether it's a course for fire lieutenants or an entire 132 class of game design students, or whether it's, although my research sort of starts at middle school, because I do think kids have to know how to have that little bit of abstract thinking, which comes in sort of around middle school to really be able to think through problems at the level. But I have a 5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and a 15-month-old grandchildren. The top two have their own iPads, have their own iPad channels, and the 5-year-old has her own link to both her grandmothers to just be able to FaceTime us whenever she wants to when she's at home in a Wi-Fi space. And she explained that all to me. At 5. How do we make sure they know how to learn? Because we sure as heck can't tell them if we understand what their role's going to be like when they get to be 18. Because we can't possibly. Things I want to close with. We're looking at, we had a mixed reality initiative, and then we, quite frankly, blew all the control boxes for the original research things that Canon had. But this view that this person is seeing out of the HMD, this is this patient's, this was about, actual kitchen. The goal, help this man learn how to remake breakfast in his kitchen after his stroke when he has no executive memory. He met us new 51st dates for 8 days while he was coming for therapy. But during that time, we watched the objective data captured by the HMD show that his time in making cereal, finding the props and making cereal, a cup of coffee, and toasting a bagel went from 3.5 hours to 45 minutes. He couldn't tell us how. He never could. It wasn't even, he had no conscious understanding. It was subconscious. Something was happening because the data was capturing. That's really cool. And I'm really excited by this type of MR. And we've just, that was what the interns were using for their contest. I'm going to see if this, okay. After questions, if anybody wants to see any of those videos, I'll show you. Or you can see them all on our website. But I just wanted to say thanks for spending some time thinking about how we produce avid learners. And please, questions or comments or even sarcastic remarks are fine.
Yeah.
Anybody?
What's the name of the tool you can pick up the widgets to make your own game? What's the name of the tool? You know, you showed that the kids can pick one of those. Yeah.
The things to make the robot?
Yeah.
Okay, we work in the Unity game engine, so our games are in the Unity engine. So and if you want to know more information about that, our designer is sitting right back there with the checkered shirt on, Alex, and she can, isn't checkered? Kind of, yeah. And she can give you some more information about those particulars.
Thank you.
You're very, sure, absolutely. Ma'am?
Do you think it's ever too late for someone to become an avid learner?
No. I think we just have to pick into what they want. What do you want or need to learn? Once I'm not sitting in math class at 6:30 in the morning, sorry math guys, and I don't know how to do math, well guess what? If I'm good at math and I'm going to be a programmer, put me in class at 6 at night, not 6 in the morning. So if I need or want to learn something, I'm going to learn it. And I don't think it's too late. If mentally the person has decided they're too old to learn anything, then they've made a decision that'll be a significant barrier.
So the schools are the primary reason we don't have avid learners, right?
Yes.
Because the kids are creative.
Are you still recording?
Do you want me to stop?
No, not at all. Because I'll declare, the only people I've not brought around the table to talk about this whole thing are principals and policymakers.
Yeah, the kids are creative at 5, they lose their creativity at 6 because they enter school, right?
Truthfully, they keep their creativity all the way through 5th grade and all the way through elementary school.
And then bam.
And then puberty hits, and they start changing classes. So I don't like my math teacher because he's hard, but I really like my English teacher.
Right.
So they do bad in math, and they do good in English.
Yeah. Well, so my question is, I'm a firm believer in everything you say, experiential learning, it's awesome, self-learning. We once talked about, you remember we talked about the hole in the wall experiment with Dr. Sugata Mitra, where he hit a block and where people like the XPRIZE, which a project I'm working on, hit a block is, what is the cutoff line between somebody acquiring basic fundamental reading, literacy skills, and becoming an experiential learner? Because you need some basics to become an experiential learner. But the problem is, we are trying to give you the basics all through K through 12. Now we want to have a cutoff, but where does it end? Does it end at 6th grade? Does it end at second grade?
No, it
How
ends
do
before we
get
start,
understand?
actually, because right now, I don't know about you guys, but what's the most boring book you had to read in high school? In my high school, it was Silas Marner.
Old Man in the Sea.
Catcher in the Rye back there. That would have been great, but I went to a Catholic high school. See, if I give a student, okay, 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, a reader, something that is on their reading level, but it's a topic that bores them, they're not going to do it well. But if I look at a 5th grader and I give them a 5th grade level thing on Tony Hawk or skateboarding, they're going to ace that because they want to learn it. So guess what? They learn it. Back to Father Guido Salducci. If I'm only going to remember 3 things in 5 years, is that what I need to remember? Probably not. What I need to remember is, how do you read through a book and understand the culture, the motivations, the protagonist, the antagonist, how the flow is going? So give them something that's appropriate to their century. In high school, in college, give them Silas Marner. Fine. You have to read it. If you don't want to read it, withdraw.
But you have an option to go to college or not.
Correct, and you have that drop add option.
Yeah.
You cannot drop math class at 8 in the morning and pick it back up again at 1:30 in the afternoon. The option's not there. And it should be. And sometimes, here's where, how's Florida Virtual School playing into that? I don't know. I can do math at a different time there, but apparently I have to be having either a problem or something before I can get into Florida Virtual School to do that one course, but I'm still in a regular high school. We're in a real mishmash because in order to design new, you have to abandon the old. And I don't think we're trying to add on to make it better when we need to get rid of it and design new. Tear down the house, the one-room schoolhouse was better. Tear down the 500-person lecture hall and start new. Because it's changed. So you asked about anybody learn new things. Yes, my granddaughter has taught her other grandfather so many things about the iPad. And Fred's a painter, and he's not. He can barely turn on his iPhone. She's telling him, and he actually is using it now. So it might be who my teacher is, who my mentor is, too. There's a whole new thing. What if I had a bunch of mentors? So even if I had a problem with this teacher, there were 4 mentors online that were math professionals from different places who just come hang out from 6 to 10. They're cleared by the school system and everything, and they give me answers. Or guess what? Go on Khan Academy. Somebody asked me if we were going to be a competition with Science Valley for Khan Academy. I said, a competition? I'll embed the link for any principal they need because I don't want to teach that. Let them go offline, or sort of a simulation version of academic language, find it and come back. Do the remedial work to understand what wind velocity is, then come back and make me the exact right wind vane to get the robotics building up and running because Reggie's battery died. So if you want your guide back up, he needs a new battery. The robotics building has no power because we need to get energy back up. That's how they start. We have a problem, can you help us make a solution? We start from there. You have to guide people. Experiential is not throwing them and seeing what lives. And that's one of those questions. How much guidance versus how much mastery, and when does it swap? And when does that person start going around to the new learners and talking to them? If we can get the cycle going that way, oh man, that would be really fun. It'd be fun. Imagine, I do the same thing for DOD. Imagine having recruits that know how to think and are competent and confident they can learn, because that's what you're going to ask them to do. Sir.
So I like your perspective, and I have many conversations. I agree with you, and I like the way that you look at it because I have a dual side. I have the evil alter ego as father. So I have a 9-year-old who's in elementary school, and her school is just flooding to technology. Technology in the classroom, technology in the classroom, technology in the classroom. And I find myself going, whoa, wait. Because, for one, what happens with the classroom in her situation is they take away the only relationship I care at all about, and that is the relationship between she and her teacher.
Correct.
She can do all that stuff at home, right? That's my experience,
Yeah.
which is not everybody's experience.
No,
And also there are great traditional methods for doing things. You can play a math game and work 10 problems, And in the same time, you could work 50 problems, which is going to be much, much more beneficial.
Yes.
There's an engagement issue and so forth, but these are all balances. So what I hear you saying is, it's not about the technology, it's that the technology can help us do more.
Oh, heck yes. If the technology is working at the right level, it disappears, and I'm left with human-to-human communication. I just may be communicating with someone in Peru who's a math tutor, and they happen to have taken a vacation, but they're still here on Skype every time I'm talking to them. The fact it's Skype is not it. What's really funny is they're doing what the fire department first did. When the fire department first walked in, they said, we want those mixed reality goggles. They wanted to buy bling. They were looking for bling salesmen, and Ron refused to let them even look at it. He said, that's not what you want. That's not what you want.
These kids at computer banks.
Well, see,
right?
that's what we used
And
to
they work
do.
them for
How many
an
people
hour and a half. I
remember,
said,
you
"Why
guys
are
would
you
remember
doing
this,
that?"
computers where the computers all face the wall. So
Yeah.
here I'm the teacher, I'm looking at the back of everybody's head. No, that's not it.
But Paul happens to live in a place where we have a great teacher for his 9-year-old. 98% of the population on the planet has well-meaning teachers that are not equipped
No
to
doubt.
teach.
No doubt.
So,
I'm not saying technology
Well-
shouldn't be there. I'm saying technology are tools, right? And what we should be concentrating is on learning and education. Right?
true.
And the teachers have something to learn too, because classroom teachers feel they have to be the expert. And I'll give you an example why they can't be. They can't be an expert because we had the entire 5th grade from one of the local schools, Theo School. And so there were 25 5th graders in our lab alone at the same time. And there were these group of people playing around planetary physics. And the physics said that you can launch celestial bodies into the solar system. You can mess with the force, you can mess with the mass, you can change the direction and then launch it.